All right, welcome into the H-Town Hoops podcast. I am Adam Spolane. I am with Brandon Scott. Austin Mendez is producing, and we have a special guest today. Our guest is a staff writer for The Ringer. She is also a New York Times bestselling author of Giannis, and she has a new book out called Dream, The Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. We are joined by Mirin Fader. Mirin, thank you for joining us. I have my copy of the book right here.
Oh,
Brandon
yay!
has it as well. Um,
Yay!
First of all, congratulations on this.
Thank you.
It is outstanding, as one would expect. It's just. I guess I'll start right there. What made you want to write about Akeem Olajuwon?
Oh my God, Dream is fascinating. First of all, just from an athletic standpoint, nobody did what he did. And I feel like over the years, it saddens me how he's really left out of these conversations of all time greats outside of Houston. You guys know, but others seem to forget him. And just personally, like his devotion to religion, really, I feel like he paved the way for so many international superstars and he never gets credit for it. And I just felt like all of these things would make a really compelling book.
Yeah, and I would say I would agree with what Adam said. This is really good work. So congratulations to
Thank
you and
you.
kudos to you for doing it. But also kind of just piggybacking on what you said about the things outside of the game. We'll get to some of the basketball stuff as well. But I know one of the reasons why someone like yourself would want to write either a feature story or a book about someone is because when you peel the layer back a bit,
Mhm.
there's more to it than what meets the eye. There's more to it than just the stats and the sports accolades. Speak to what this book is trying to accomplish in that way of telling a little bit more of a deeper and more complex story about Akeem Olajuwon.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. I really think this book seeks to show the person behind the jersey in the sense of Hakeem's legacy. It's way more than stats. I called 266 people. Not one person had something negative to say about him. It shows that your legacy is how you impact others, how you give to others. And he is such a selfless person, such a selfless teammate, such a selfless leader. And this book really just kind of goes through his impact on so many different communities. He's a hero to many, but even if you spend like 5 minutes with him or hours, he impacts you in some way. And I just really wanted this book to show people why his story is so important and why honestly we could really use more of that humble spirit in our culture today.
266 people. Like how was the range just in terms of people that he grew up with, people that he went to U of H with, people that he played with or against in the NBA? Just what was that split like?
Yeah, pretty even among all the things that you just mentioned. I think first, what was most important is getting his coaches and teammates from Nigeria because they have never been interviewed. And it's a part of the story that is almost like a two-sentence max. Oh, he grew up in Legos and then all of a sudden in America. And it's like, what was his childhood like? What was he like as a kid? What were his teammates like? And so I found that part to be so fun because his coaches, who are still in Nigeria at this point, um, are in their 80s. Teammates are in their 60s, and yet they're like back in the game. Like Hakeem is this skinny beanpole just starting to play. So I thought that was really fun. I think the other interviews that were awesome were just getting, his most fierce competitors. So Robert Parrish talking about, Hakeem is the one player that I would pay to see, or Dominique Wilkins, Jerry West, Bill Walton. Like for me, it was just fun as like a lover of basketball. I was just freaking out at all the people that I was going to be able to ask about, like, okay, how bad did Dream shake you?
Yeah, but I thought you did something really important historically by going through the history of basketball, or at least some of the history of basketball in Nigeria and in the African continent. Because of course, we have Guy Lewis saying, when he first lays eyes on Dre, obviously Hakeem Olajuwon is really tall, but he's like, I've never heard of a good basketball player from
Right.
Africa, and I thought that you did a good job of sort of threading this needle of, hey, where we your last book, your first book, obviously with Giannis, and a high profile today, a high profile athlete of African descent, but going back to sort of, hey, this history before Hakeem Olajuwon, but also Hakeem Olajuwon sort of establishing himself as the first um, beyond African basketball star. Just what was that like for you, kind of from a historical context, being able to thread that needle?
Yeah, I'm really happy that you brought that up because when I was working on this, I almost saw it as like two books in one. Like you have Olajuwon's story, and then you have this whole other story about the history of basketball in Nigeria and other countries in Africa. And then when does the NBA start thinking about Africa? And then what is the effect of, Olajuwon succeeding in college? And then all these college coaches are like, hey, we can recruit in Africa. Like these things we take for granted today. We look at rosters, they are international. Many of those players are from Africa, but Hakeem does not get credit for being that first pioneer. And what this book also shows is there's people that came before him. Yomi Sangodeyi of Nigeria is one of the best basketball players to ever play in Nigeria. And he was a FIBA Hall of Famer. He played overseas for more than a decade. Like I wanted people to know his name and to give him his flowers. There were two African players at Fordham from South Sudan that came like about a year before Olajuwon. They set the mode for Olajuwon. So Olajuwon would change the game and really cause other coaches to start thinking more broader internationally. And that was just part of my favorite part of the research. And even without the basketball, just where he grew up was like a very vibrant place. Like Lagos, as it is now, is a very vibrant. It's the food, the culture, the music, the fashion, all of these things. But he was in the same neighborhood as Fela, the musician and the activist. He was right near one of the most iconic music festivals, Festac. So I just wanted to show what Olajuwon, grew up around.
You said it was probably a couple months ago that you said like one of the more interesting aspects of doing the reporting of this book was just Hakeem Olajuwon in the 80s. Just how different was Hakeem Olajuwon in the 80s as opposed to what he became in the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, kind of sticking to this theme of athletically and personally, athletically, like he is such a dominant defensive player. I mean, his instincts are out of this world. He knows when to cheat over, when to block a shot. These are just instinctual IQ things that he has to complement his incredible, rebounding ability and athletic ability. But personally, he is a bit, as he would say himself, he had a bit of a temper. And so the competitiveness that we see would often come out because people would hack him because they couldn't stop him. And as we all know, the person who responds to the hacking is always the one that gets called. So he would get ejected from games. And he just sort of he grew into a person that was so much calmer, was so much less fiery. He kept his competitiveness, but it didn't allow him to get taken out of his game. And now today you see him, he's just this like regal, man of peace, just this like awesome person. And you're like, oh my God, this dude used to punch people like in the NBA. Like, it's so crazy.
But it's also funny though, reconciling like where does that come from? Because it's interesting trying to reconcile this sort of gentle nature that he has with that other side that we all know. Like everybody in Houston has heard the stories of,
right.
Hey, like dream can be scary at times,
right?
but also is like a very gracious and gentle and kind of gentle giant, to use
Totally.
a cliche at the same time. Like how did you find reconciling those sort of dichotomies within Hakeem Olajuwon himself?
I know it's really funny, but I think what it is it's kind of goes back to like it's not like he was instigating fights. So it's not like he was just going around and people were hacking him and he felt disrespected by it just from a competitive standpoint. Like it really came from not a bad place. It was just like, you are in my space. And back then refereeing was different. There was only two refs. So they missed like a whole lot of stuff and people knew what they could get away with. And so I think he developed this temper because of that, and also because he wanted to prove that he belonged. He's this new player in this new country and he wants to compete and do well. But also, like, he was so beloved from his college teammates. They were like, Dream is the funniest person you will ever come across. Like, he's so nice, he's so kind. Everyone has a story about how he did something selfless to help him. And I think people are multifaceted, but what really I think allowed him to lean more into that side of like this gentle giant, like you said, was embracing Islam more. And it just gave him a higher framework, right? Like if your goal in life is to please God and to be a good person in your family and just live your life and work hard, there's all these petty things like people saying things to you in the game, like it just doesn't matter. It's just so low on the totem pole of importance.
one of the more interesting aspects of his career goes back to 92, when to me things with the Rockets were a little rocky and he basically wanted to get traded. What did you learn about him through that period, and how do you think his life is different or his career is different if he winds up getting traded?
Oh my God. Like, you guys know how weird it is seeing him in the Toronto purple. Can you imagine the Clippers red and blue? I just think it would be like disrespectful to the original Rockets red, you know? Like, and it was this close to happening. So I think honestly that part was super juicy to report because it really was like this close to happening. It was like one player and it was off. And it just kept getting stalled. Like it seemed like it was a done deal. I mean, Dream basically said, "Hey guys, let me know when you need me to show up to training camp. Like, I'm done with Houston." And it was fascinating talking to a lot of now adult men who were 16-year-olds at the time who went to the same mosque as him. And, they're hearing about this feud in the papers, the management's accusing him of faking a hamstring injury and all, and Dream is going to leave. And these kids are simply saying to their hero who is in services next to them, "Please, Dream, don't leave. We love you. Houston loves you. Can you work it out?" And Dream is like saying to these kids, I'm sorry, I can't play somewhere that disrespects me. It's like, imagine LeBron being at your church. Like, that is the equivalent of what that's like. And he's discussing a potential trade with a random stranger who is a fan. So that is just crazy to me. But I think that it was a turning point because he wasn't getting any younger. The Rockets were massively disappointing. There was all this optimism after the 86 finals where they faced the Celtics. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this team is terrible. Like they can't turn it around. And so he, kind of begrudgingly stays, and then they're forced to work it out. And the best things obviously happen after that. If he goes to the Clippers, there's no championships. I'm sorry. Like, there's not for the Rockets, not for the Clippers. I think it would be really sad.
Yeah, it's like that alternate universe that
Right.
you don't really want to imagine it, but it's almost like you're rubbernecking. Like, you kind of want to squint and see like what does that actually look like? But no, please don't let this actually be something that could have really happened.
Right.
So take us through the post. So how is it different after that? How is Dream's life and legacy sort of different after that sort of saga or dramatic spell, if you will? And of course, we know what the history is after that. They win back-to-back championships. Take us to the post legend Dream at that point.
Right. So as all of this is going on, he's in this gradual inner transformative period. It isn't like one day, he's punching people and the next day he wakes up a saint. Like, as we all know through our all personal growth journeys, like, it takes time. And I think there's a little misunderstanding that it happened so quick. Like, oh, 92 he was getting ejected and feuding with management, and then 93 they win, or 94 they win. But it really was an ongoing process. And so by that point, he realized, hey, I'm materially successful. I make a lot of money. I'm considered one of the best in the league, but I feel so empty inside. Like, I feel so spiritually empty. I feel like something is so missing. And he's making these really important relationships with men in his community, both at his mosque. And then this other man who's a great father figure. He was his lawyer for a period of time, Henry E. Barando. And he starts to sort of see life a bit differently. Like, it isn't about money. I don't need possessions. I just need people I love, and I do the things that I love to do. And so he's starting to be a little bit more open to teammates. Kenny Smith is like, "Dream, can I sit next to you on the bus?" And they actually talk, and it's the cutest story ever. Kenny's like, "I think that was the breakthrough." And he was like, "Because nobody wants to talk to Dream." Can you just imagine Dream on the bus, like, all alone after giving like 20 and 10 every night? Like, to think of how disoriented those Rockets were is sad. But anyway, so they start talking on the bus and they become friends. And, Dream is starting to like show his humor more. And people say, "Okay, Dream is he's a nice guy. He's funny." And then all of a sudden, like, Rudy is the coach, and he knows how to use Dream. So what happens is the spacing, the things that we see in modern basketball, Rudy adapts that team around Dream. And I think it's this combination of the system being better. He got better players around Dream. They made some moves. They had hustlers. They had outside shooters, right? How is Dream going to pass out of the double team to somebody if they can't make the three? Like, what good is that? They can finally make the three. And he is feeling more spiritually renewed.
They were. It's funny. They really were the first team that started to embrace 3-pointers. If
Right.
you watch any of these playoff games from like 94, 95, they were always among the league leaders just in 3-point attempts. They started to play small in 95. So they
Right.
kind of birthed how basketball is played today. But he's always going to be known for the Dream Shake. And there were a lot of different iterations of it. Kids that grew up here back then would try to emulate it. It did not go well most of the time. And it's also one of those things that you haven't seen players be able to replicate that since he
Right.
I still try it right now. As soon as we finish, I'm gonna try to dream shake this little piece of this little piece of trash here. I'm gonna
There
try
you
to
go.
dream shake it
Give
right
me up
into the
and
trash
under.
can.
Give it-
but I am wondering, just because of how unique it was, like did people think that it was illegal?
Yes. This is one of my like favorite parts of the reporting where I just got super nerdy basketball wise. I needed to call the refs because first of all, I knew he was cussing out refs. So I had to confront the refs. Like, what did he say to you? And of course it was hysterical when they said, Olajuwon would say, God will judge you for this call. And they're like, I think God has bigger priorities than this game. But anywho, while talking to these refs, I was like, so I'm just curious, like, had you ever seen anything like the Dream Shake before? And they were like, to be honest, like, at first we thought it was illegal. And then I just opened up a whole new can of worms because I was like, oh my God, you're right. It was so quick and so innovative. I wonder how they, were able to ref it. And so a lot of them said that like Hakeem's brilliance actually made them watch film of him before the games. So the refs are preparing for the games by watching film of Olajuwon and they zoom in on it. They go slow. They see, okay, he kept his pivot. It's not a travel. So I just think that's so cool that like your move is so iconic and it's so new and fresh that like the refs are like unclear if it's okay.
Which refs did you talk to?
Bill
Oh
Spooner.
yes, we got to hear this.
Okay, the problem is a lot of like Jack Kersey has passed, so
Yeah.
that sucks. But Bill Spooner, Ed T. Rush, Don Vaden. I think Don is the one that Hakeem was like threatening God to punish him. And I think Hakeem actually punched him. He punched one of those guys. It's in there. My memory, but yeah. And the ref who told me that was like, I swear he's such a nice guy. It was just a heated moment. So again, even the refs were kind of his foes, but they still love him. And then I think there was another one whose name is escaping me, but they were also great because they were like, he made us better, like as refs. Like we had to step our game up.
Can you imagine if we had ref punchings in a Twitter era? Like there was just, I hate that the internet, and maybe I actually love that the internet didn't exist. Maybe I hate it and love it at the same time. But could you just imagine that on your timeline? Dreams socking a ref or just even hearing about it?
I was just thinking about this in another context because I was asked about the draft, and you know how before at the 84 draft that Hakeem is drafted over Jordan, might I add, they do the coin flip still. And I was thinking of what if we had the social media era and the conspiracy crazies were like, oh, the coin isn't real. Oh, the coin is rigged. It was supposed to go here. The Rockets didn't earn the #1 pick. I could just see it right now.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about this because this is something that I did not really know about. I knew that Hakeem Olajuwon obviously played soccer growing up.
Yeah.
And I'd heard about some handball but I didn't realize how close how much handball he played.
Right.
And how close it was to like handball over basketball. Like I guess I just thought it was soccer, having not,
right.
Like you mentioned this isn't a deeply reported story until now.
Right.
And so I guess for me, I just, growing up, just assumed that it was either soccer or basketball, but handball was also something that he participated in, was very good at. There's even a quote in your book of someone saying he was the best handball player in the city, arguably.
Right.
And it was really that was more so torn between basketball and handball and not soccer.
Exactly.
Like, tell us more about that, and also maybe how even playing that sport and being good at it may have even helped him as a basketball player.
Yeah, this is actually one of the things that I learned too, because all I remember hearing was soccer. Like I didn't even know about the handball situation. It's never talked about. But he definitely loved it, and his nickname on the handball team was Hot Shot. He was so unbelievably quick because handball is all about agility and quick movements. It's kind of like being a bigger point guard in the sense that, like on the basketball court, you can just see over your defender in the competition. That's how he was in handball. Like it was so easy for him to just kind of see over the field and make these, quick passes because you had to pass the ball within 3 seconds. And apparently, handball was just being introduced in Legos at that time. So it was a new sport and it was an exciting thing, versus soccer had been around forever. And that's like the sport of the country. But handball was like this new, exciting thing. And he was so good at it that when these basketball coaches were asking him to play, he was like, no, I'm like too busy playing handball. And even when he agrees to play basketball, he refuses to leave the handball team. So even as he wins a gold medal with the basketball team, he also wins a gold medal with the handball team. I really think he could have been like a Hall of Fame handball player. I mean, at the Atlanta Olympics, I don't think I put this in the book, but the 96 Olympics, he watched like all of Team USA's handball games. Like he attended every single game. Um he's just like he's just a man of so many talents. Like to this day, he is an excellent table tennis player, like competitive. Like, like I'd be afraid to be on the other side with Dream. But yes, I think it's such an example of like all these sports actually made him an excellent basketball player. I think because he didn't specialize, that's what led to such a long and fruitful, durable career.
Your last thing for you. When you were going through the reporting of this book, was there a story that you were told where that kind of made you not like change directions, but all of a sudden you decided, you know what, I have to devote a section of this book to this story when you weren't necessarily planning on it?
Yeah, I had never heard the story of the random man that was cleaning the floor in the summit where they used to play, and there's nobody else in the gym. It almost sounds like too good to be true, right? It almost sounds like a fairy tale. Again, Dream. But there's this random guy, and Dream has never seen him before, and he just goes up to him and he's like, Mr. Olajuwon, like, are you Muslim? And Olajuwon, who like hasn't practiced in a decade, is kind of like, yeah. And the guy's like, hey, there's a mosque like around the corner. Like, do you want to go? And it's this like pivotal moment in his life because he didn't know there was a mosque there. Like, Google Maps didn't exist. You didn't just like know where things were. I guess he hadn't seen it. And he never saw that man again. He never got the man's name. But, those close to Olajuwon say like that moment is so beautiful. They think it was like meant to happen because without that person, I don't know if he would have gone to services and changed his whole life. And when I had that scene, I honestly knew it was like, it needs to be more than just one moment. That is like the gut of the book. Like biographies, we watch people grow and evolve. There's 400 damn pages. Like a person changes. And so that moment to me, it was like, okay, I know what the book is about. Like this book is about transformation and it's about community. Like another person helped him. And so it does not surprise me that Dream continued to live his life helping other people.
Yeah, he owns that mosque in downtown, that
Yes.
large mosque, and I know you mentioned that, but that's
Yes.
one of the things that I've learned about him recently is that for one, that he owns that one, and then
Right.
also just like over time, like over the years, I'd be places and it's like, hey, Hakeem owns that, he owns
Right.
that, and I'm like, oh my god, the
Owns half
dude
of
owns
Houston.
everything.
Okay, the way that he has just dominated in real estate is inspiring. It's
Yes,
iconic. Like he's made more money in real estate than basketball. Like all of us need to figure out what our like second and third acts are going to be. That's all I have to say.
for sure, for sure.
Some of us need the first act.
Yeah, right. That's real.
The book is called Dream, The Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. I must say, before we let you go, he wrote an autobiography that came out in 96.
Yes.
It's called Living the Dream. It was with Danny Nobler. It came
Yes.
out, I was in fourth grade. I did a book report on it in fourth grade. I did it again in fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, and probably at least once or twice in high school. So I'm hoping that there will be some kid in fourth grade right now who sees this book, reads it, does a book report on it this year, and does it all throughout the rest of their school career. Congratulations again on this book. It's outstanding, as you would expect. It's a fascinating story. He's a fascinating human being and basketball player. So we thank you for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, that was so kind. Thank you both so much.
That is Mirin Fader, the best-selling author who wrote Giannis. She now has the book Dream, the Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. A pleasure.
Thank you.